Ahoy, mateys! It's time to hoist the Jolly Roger and set sail for adventure on the high seas. In 1990, Lucasfilm Games, later known as LucasArts, released a swashbuckling point-and-click adventure that would change the face of gaming humor forever. The Secret of Monkey Island introduced us to a young wannabe pirate named Guybrush Threepwood and a world filled with eccentric characters, clever puzzles, and witty dialogue. Today, we'll dive into the story behind The Secret of Monkey Island, exploring its inspiration and how it was designed and how it came to be. So grab your sword, prepare your best insults, and join us for a treasure trove of memories on today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 215th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people that have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby, video games, a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we're setting sail for the Caribbean to explore The Secret of Monkey Island, first released in October of 1990. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who could probably win a sword fight with nothing but insults. He's my brother, Rob Casson. So, Rob, if you were going to challenge someone to an insult sword fight, what would be your best comeback?
Dave, ill-prepared, because normally for a comeback you have to have something that comes to you first.
So what would be your best insult?
That's also a tough one, because someone has to have really made me angry.
So
There are 10 million particles in the universe that we can observe. Your mama took the ugly ones and put them into one nerd.
Okay. All right. Fine. I'll take it. I will take it. I already know the answer to this. Secret of Monkey Island, any experience with it?
I cannot say.
I figured you'd be like, other than living on Monkey Island, That's a dumb joke. I am an idiot.
Yeah, we're gonna let you wallow in that one, Dave.
Why? I'm already. Never mind. Okay. Well, then we're gonna learn some things today. Before we get into the secret of Monkey Island, did you hear the secret? Did you hear the secret, Rob?
No, Dave.
No, didn't hear the secret? No secret? Well, before we get into said secret, why don't you tell our listeners what else has happened during the current week in gaming history?
Kicking it off on October 9th, 1981, Nintendo released Game & Watch Mickey Mouse, a special title in the Game & Watch series featuring none other than the beloved Disney character, Mickey Mouse. In Mickey Mouse, players control Mickey as he works to catch eggs rolling down 4 slopes before they hit the ground and break. The player moves Mickey left and right to position him under the eggs to catch them in a basket. As the game progresses, the eggs roll faster and in greater numbers, increasing the challenge. The inclusion of Mickey Mouse helped broaden the appeal of the Game & Watch series, combining Nintendo's engaging gameplay design with a universally recognized and loved character. This game exemplified the simplicity and charm of the Game & Watch series, contributing to Nintendo's growing success in the handheld gaming market.
We did an episode on the Game & Watch series recently.
Yeah, did you mention Mickey Mouse? Because I don't think you did.
I sure did. We talked about all the licensed ones, Mickey Mouse, and I don't remember any of the others.
You know what? That being the case, Dave, then we're just going to have the listeners go back, listen to it, and tell us who's right.
Yes, it's me.
Go give it a listen.
I'm
Next
right.
up,
I'm right. I'm always right.
sure, that's we'll leave that for the end of the podcast. Stick
Okay.
around if you want to learn more.
Okay.
And with that, moving along on October 10th, 1997, Interplay Entertainment released Fallout for PC, a game that would become a seminal title in the role-playing game genre. Set in a post apocalyptic world devastated by a nuclear war, Fallout introduced players to a richly detailed universe where they navigated the wasteland, making choices that would significantly impact the story and its world. The game was praised for its open ended gameplay, dark humor, deep character customization, and the innovative SPECIAL strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, luck system that allowed for diverse character builds. Fallout's blend of strategic turn based combat, immersive storytelling, and moral ambiguity set a new standard for RPGs and laid the foundation for one of the most beloved franchises in video game history. We told its story back in episode 111, so if you want to go learn more about the origins of Fallout series, go check it out.
We did. And who doesn't call it the special system?
Someone who wanted to make sure that it was known that it was each of those letters.
Okay. All right, weirdo. Sure, we'll go with that.
As someone who's never played Fallout, that might make your answer more clear.
Yes, maybe.
On October 2006, Google announced its acquisition of YouTube for $1.65 billion in stock, a landmark deal that would have a profound impact on the future of online video and digital media. At the time, YouTube was a rapidly growing platform known for allowing users to easily upload, share, and view videos online. The acquisition was a strategic move by Google to strengthen its presence in the burgeoning online video space and to capitalize on YouTube's massive and rapidly expanding user base. This purchase set the stage for YouTube to become the dominant video sharing platform it is today, significantly shaping the landscape of digital content creation, entertainment, and advertising. It's a pretty big deal.
Well, it's a huge deal for gaming. Think how much YouTube has given us between Let's Play and I mean, heck, our main way that we now learn about video games, like we don't even have E3 anymore. All those are just all those are online now, right? I mean, we get our game trailers at every event. The game trailers are on YouTube. That's how most of us learn about new games nowadays. YouTube is very, 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 very important. Very, very important.
Very big deal. And speaking of very big deals, on October 10th, 2007, Valve released the Orange Box, a groundbreaking compilation for PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3 that included 5 critically acclaimed games: Half Life 2, Half Life 2 Episode 1, Half Life 2 Episode 2, Portal, and Team Fortress 2. This collection was celebrated for offering incredible value, delivering both the continuation of the Half Life saga and the innovative, mind bending puzzle game Portal, as well as the beloved multiplayer shooter Team Fortress 2. The Orange Box showcased Valve's mastery of diverse game genres and became one of the most iconic releases in gaming history, cementing the legacy of these titles in the industry. We learned about it during our episode on Portal, which was back in episode 163. So if you want to learn more, go ahead and check it out.
Go listen to that episode. I'm a big, huge Portal fan.
Same. It's
Orange
great.
Orange Box was fantastic. I remember buying it for my Xbox 360 and then later my PC. So big fan. Orange Box. Very few things in this world, in gaming history in its entirety, that were as good of a value as the Orange Box. No doubt about it in my mind whatsoever. About to argue with me?
I'm just trying to think. There's a lot of stuff that goes on really good sale now, but like at the same time, like those are great games that if we're talking at the time, like yeah, I
Okay.
mean it's a pretty good deal, but
Okay, that's a very fair statement. You are correct. The gaming landscape has changed. There's some deep discounts. Like you can buy Portal now for like 99 cents. So you are correct about that in a lot of ways, but contextually, historically, at its time, you couldn't touch it. And I think that if you were to go back and look at game bundles that were similarly released throughout history, uh, I don't think you'd find many that would touch this. So many highly regarded, highly rated games in one bundle for the price they asked at the time, which I believe was $30 if I remember correctly. It's just unheard of still.
I'm just trying to think if there were like any Battlefield collections or Star Wars Battlefront, just something else that might rival it, but not going to waste all that time.
Okay, thank you.
Well, instead of that, we'll talk about October 12th, 2010, when Electronic Arts released Medal of Honor for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC, rebooting the classic first person shooter series by shifting its focus from World War II to the modern day war in Afghanistan. The game sought to deliver a gritty and realistic portrayal of contemporary warfare, following elite Tier 1 operators on covert missions. While this single player campaign was praised for its intensity and authenticity, the game received mixed reviews for its multiplayer component, which was developed by DICE, known for the Battlefield series. Despite its ambition to bring a more realistic approach to the military shooter genre, Medal of Honor struggled to stand out against its competitors, though it succeeded in reviving interest in the long running franchise. We covered the original Medal of Honor and looked at how the series came about in episode 9,
9.
so give it a listen if you want to learn more.
9. Ugh, so
Yeah,
long ago.
yeah, you might not learn so much about the game like you do now. It might be a little
It's
weird.
different. Format's different, but we still talked about the origins of the series. That's the Steven Spielberg series, so we definitely talked about it back when.
Well, I'll take your word for it, Dave.
Yeah, I know. It was a long time ago.
Well, speaking of long time ago, on October 7th, 2014, not really that long ago, uh, Creative Assembly and Sega released Alien Isolation for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PS3, Xbox 360, and PC. Set in the universe of the Alien film franchise, the game takes place 15 years after the events of the original 1979 Alien movie and follows Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Ellen Ripley, as she investigates her mother's disappearance. Alien Isolation was widely praised for its intense atmosphere, faithful recreation of the look and feel of the original film, and its emphasis on stealth and survival horror. Unlike many other games in the Alien franchise, Isolation focused on evading a single, nearly invincible xenomorph rather than combat, which heightened the tension and fear throughout the game. The game's success reinvigorated interest in the Alien franchise within the gaming community and is often regarded as one of the best horror games of its generation.
Very, very true. That is an excellent survival horror game. If you've never had a chance to play it, I highly recommend it. It is easily one of the best in terms of creating tension of all time, for sure. So
I'll have to give it a check out.
you should do that.
And with that, Dave, I think it's time today to learn about today's topic.
Yes, indeed. So we are picking up the career of Ron Gilbert. We last visited Ron in episode 162. So if you'd like to learn about his early career, go check out that episode. In it, we learned about Gilbert's childhood and how his love of film evolved into a desire to tell stories through video game development. Not quite point A to point B, there's more to it, but that's the gist of it. He landed a job at Lucasfilm Games, now known as LucasArts, and was eventually offered the opportunity to co-develop his own game alongside a graphic artist named Gary Winnick. Do you remember the game that they made, Rob?
Not no.
So together, Winnick and Gilbert designed a graphic adventure game. It was inspired by comedy horror movies, B movies, and it was called Maniac Mansion. And as part of the process of developing Maniac Mansion, they helped develop a new gaming engine for LucasArts called SCUMM, or the script creation utility for Maniac Mansion.
I do remember SCUMM.
You do remember SCUMM. So
Because that was
today,
funny.
right, SCUMM is funny. So, because it had all those other. Yeah,
Yeah, there were other acronyms that they used on the project, weren't there?
yeah, other weird ones too, like booger or stuff like that. It was all bile. It was all body humor, like body, body fluids and stuff. So today we're picking up Gilbert's career after Maniac Mansion. So we're gonna pick up where that story ends. And once the team finished Maniac Mansion, Gilbert kind of stayed with the adventure aspect of LucasArts. They were making other games. He did work on other things. For instance, I'm not going to talk much about it, but like they made a ship simulation game called like HMM Pegasus or something like that, and he programmed for that. And so there were other games he worked on, but for the most part, he stayed with the adventure side and he stayed with SCUMM. He stayed with that engine. So right after Maniac Mansion, he lent his programming skills to another project at LucasArts. It was a 1986 MMORPG. Believe it or not, there was an MMORPG in 1986 called Habitat. Now, Habitat is historically important. It's considered a bridge of sorts between, the MUDs and the textual, MMOs of before, and then the modern. It's really considered the forerunner of the modern MMORPG. It's important, so I have it tucked away in a list of future topics to cover. So maybe you'll see an episode someday. So we may pick this story up again in the middle of Ron Gilbert's career, but he was just a programmer on that. Its significance isn't Ron Gilbert, but more so where it stands in the history of the MMORPG genre. So that's not going to be much part of our story today. But he was a part of Habitat. He was also part of the next game that they were making on the SCUMM engine, and that was picked up by a completely different team. Now, that game is called Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbender. Fun, huh?
Yeah, that's something.
Do you have any questions about that?
Uh,
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
It's just such an outlandish title that I just wanted to make a point of it. So,
yeah, I'm just curious. Who's doing the mind bending? Is it the alien, or is it you doing it on the alien?
the aliens are doing mind bending. They're tying into like radio frequencies and stuff, and taking over for people and so on and so forth. So if I remember the story correctly, I didn't exactly research it for that. Someone's going to tell me now they were tying into radio frequencies, you jackass, or something like that. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they did Zach McCracken, right? And the team that went into Zach McCracken had the team that did Zach McCracken had wanted to make it a serious game, right? They went into it and they were like, "Hey, we want this to be serious. We're thinking about making it an Indiana Jones movie," and so they wanted to get it serious. But Gilbert came in and said, look, one of the things that people really like the most about Maniac Mansion is the fact that we have, you know, our own thing of humor. And so he convinced them to add humor into Zach McCracken, which, kind of how people remember it nowadays. That's what Lucas Art game adventure games were really known for. Is what's the word I'm looking for? They were known for their sense of humor. Okay, moving on. So they're working on Zach McCracken, and that's 1988. And then we're getting to 1989 when, speaking of Indiana Jones, Lucas, as a, Lucas Arts, Lucasfilms, the film company, they're making the next Indiana Jones movie, which was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So they turn to the Lucas Arts video game developing department and they say, "Hey, we want you to make a game that goes with the movie that coincides with the release of the film of the same name." That's basically what they ask at that point. So Gilbert gets put at the helm of that project, and they work on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade: the graphic adventure. Real creative title for it.
Oh, definitely.
I know. I mean, how could you mix it up in any way, shape, or form? So that was the third game to use the SCUMM engine. And the SCUMM engine was a useful tool, right? It was a game engine they developed, and it made the development of adventure games really convenient. So they continued to use it after Maniac Mansion, obviously, because now we're on our third game. But more importantly, they continued to make changes to it. It's not like they just took the game, the Maniac Mansion, and said, "This is the engine; it will forever be this way," and they didn't do anything with it. Because as the years progressed, technology progressed, right? Like originally we had text adventures, but now we're in a graphic adventure phase. So, there were ways that the engine was changed to make use of mouse control, and they added a graphical user interface, and they added, a bigger vocabulary and things like that. And as they went into each project, they kept adding and adding and adding to it. SCUMM ended up really powering pretty much all but two of LucasArts' entire adventure game genre. Like, literally, they made like 15, 16 adventure games, and all but two used the SCUMM engine. So it was a tool widely used by that development team. And in order to train now, we covered this in that episode, but I want to remind you, in order to train new employees, Rob, on the SCUMM engine, LucasArts conducted classes in what they called SCUMM University, right?
That's nice. That's a good one.
And so they hired programmers. Gilbert hired programmers as the guy who designed the SCUMM engine alongside others. He wasn't the only one, but he did a bunch of it. They would hire programmers whose job it was specifically to implement features that were proposed by the game designers back into the SCUMM engine. And so Gilbert in 1989 hired two men, Tim Schafer and Dave Grossman. And these programmers that were hired that way were called scumlets. The new scum recruits were scumlets.
Wow. That's a
Right?
fantastic name.
I know. So we've learned about Schafer before, way back in episode 86, where we did an episode on the story of Psychonauts. Tim Schafer created Psychonauts. And Tim broke into the gaming industry here by hiring on with LucasArts in 1989 as a scumlet. He and Dave Grossman helped to playtest Gilbert's game here, the Indiana Jones graphical adventure. And they were also put in charge of implementing the NES version of Maniac Mansion. So at this point, they were porting Maniac Mansion over, and those two also helped on that port. And if you'll recall, the NES version of Maniac Mansion was unique because the PC version it's got content that Nintendo would never approve of. So they really had to tweak the game to get it to fit into what Nintendo was going to find, what's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate for their platform. So again, go listen to that episode because that's a fascinating part of the story for as well. The idea for Gilbert's next project had actually come to him just after the completion of Zach McCracken. He was spending the weekend at a friend's house and he jotted down some story ideas about pirates.
Ooh, pirates.
In an interview, Gilbert had said that the first thing he does when he designs a new game is he sits down and writes a short story. Actually, lots of short stories. 4 to 5 pages with lots of different plots. And then he read each story and ask himself, is it interesting? Does it make sense? If the answer was no, then obviously the story would end up in the trash. So he writes these stories and basically he keeps showing them to people around the office until he hits on something, not necessarily the whole story, but something as part of the story that people really are drawn to. So, for instance, in this case, he had put ghosts into one of the stories, and that seemed to really catch everyone's interest. So then he began to think about the close connection between pirates and ghosts. You know, there's so many stories about ghost pirates and ghost ships. And when he finally came to that notion, he added a ghost pirate as the bad guy of the game, the antagonist. And he said in an interview that that's really when it all came together, when I had a nice, strong antagonist and a ghost pirate. So he writes these stories and he has them all together. He takes it back to the Lucas Arts team and shares it around the office, and the story is warmly received. And he wants to get started on the project, but unfortunately, he isn't given the green light on it because this is about the time that the team is asked to work on the Indiana Jones game. So he's given that project instead. But once that was finished in 1989, he was free to work on his project, his Ghost Pirate project, which started out as Mutiny on Monkey Island. Once the story had its foundation, Gilbert says that his next step is to take the story and break it up into step by step outlines of what the player has to do. So, in the case of this game, the first Monkey Island title, that resulted in about a 4 page list of 40 to 50 key points. And then you start writing puzzles around each of these points. And each of those points could have as many as 3 or 4 puzzles that needs to be solved. So a lot of work goes into the planning of these, you know?
Right.
Realizing somewhere in there that he's just not going to be able to go it alone, he recruits his scumlets. He asks Grossman and Schafer if they would come work on this project with him. And of course, they're going to do that, right? That's the guy that hired them into the company. So together, they all go to work on putting Monkey Island together. As they start on bringing the plot together, Gilbert discovers that Schafer and Grossman's writing styles are just too different to form a cohesive story, kind of like yours and mine. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, not. It's not.
No, I don't know. I guess I was
As
wrong.
as he put it, Grossman had a very dry, sarcastic sense of humor, while Schaefer was a little more in your face with everything. And so to work through this, Gilbert rather, assigned them different characters and story moments depending on what type of comedy he felt was required for the situation, which is great. That's called being a good team lead, good designer, you know? While they worked on their specific roles, the game's world and the basis for the character themselves were continued to be drawn out by Gilbert. It should come as no surprise, Rob, given the context, that the world was inspired by Gilbert's favorite childhood amusement ride, which, surprise, surprise, is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Nice. That's
Gilbert
good.
Grossman had once said that Gilbert told him that he always wanted to just step off the ride and talk to the people who lived in the world, right? Because on the amusement ride, you really just ride through their world. You don't ever get to interact with it. And that's what he wanted to do differently. And that's how he approached this situation, this game design, right?
Well, just think of doing that at It's a Small World.
No thanks.
Exactly.
So, with these concepts in mind, the team continued to flesh everything out. Schafer and Grossman wrote most of their dialogue while they were actually programming the game. So, admittedly, much of their work is actually improvised, which is really fascinating about this game. And then there is perhaps, Rob, what is one of the more interesting game mechanics found in this game, which is the fighting mechanic. While putting this game together, Gilbert, Schafer, and Grossman often watched Errol Flynn movies for inspiration. Now, if you don't know who Errol Flynn is, that's okay. That's a long, long time ago. Flynn was an actor during the golden age of Hollywood, like early on, 20s, 30s. That's the early age. And he was best known for his romantic swashbuckler roles. So he was a romantic pirate.
A romantic pirate, you say?
Well, they were swashbuckler movies, right? So they were like pirate movies where he was like a charming male lead and he had a romantic interest. So romantic swashbuckler. I don't know what else to say. So what they noticed in Flynn's movies was the fact that the pirates in those movies often taunted their opponents as opposed to straight out attacking them, right? So that gave these designers the idea to base the game's duels on insults instead of combat. They actually give credit to well known science fiction writer Orson Scott Card for helping them write the insults while he was visiting Skywalker Ranch. Card, of course, is best known for the Ender's Game series, but he's now known to you as the insult guy for The Secret of Monkey Island. At this point, all of the pieces are coming together, and the team is working towards getting a working prototype together. Gilbert said that it took about 3 months to get a primitive version of Monkey Island together that was playable from beginning to end. He equated it to having a rough cut of a movie and said that in it they could identify a lot of rough spots, which allowed them to cut out a whole bunch of the game that didn't flow well, but also add stuff where the game just wasn't interesting enough. Now, you'll know if you recall from our Maniac Mansion episode that Gilbert was really frustrated with Sierra Online Adventure games. That was very much part of his game philosophy. He felt that in Sierra Online games, anytime you did something wrong, you died. And he felt that dead ends and games like that were just a cheap way out for game designers. When he developed Maniac Mansion, he took this philosophy to heart. That was how he approached it. He wanted to avoid dead end situations that could end the game and just those game breaking bugs. However, the team wasn't perfect. There were some situations that could result in an end game for players, but he took those and he learned from them. And as they worked to complete the project, they were dedicated to making sure that errors like this just didn't exist in Monkey Island. And it was in such a way that the team worked towards creating the quirky world of Monkey Island. Rob, navigating the quirky world of Monkey Island is one thing, but did you know that starting your own podcast can be just as fun and much, much easier than solving a pirate's puzzle?
Really? I've always wanted to share my adventures, but the idea of recording and editing a podcast sounds like a challenge worthy of Guybrush Threepwood.
Well, thanks to Zencaster, you don't need to be a mighty pirate to make podcasting a breeze. Zencaster is an all in one podcasting platform that lets you record high quality audio and even 4K video all from your web browser. There's no need for any fancy software or complicated setups.
Wait, so no treasure maps or secret keys needed? Just click and record?
Exactly. And it gets even better than that. Zencaster's post production tools automatically clean up your recording. They remove background noise, level out your audio, cut out all those awkward silences, and get rid of those filler words like and ah. It's like having your own crew of professional editors, but without the hassle.
Well, that sounds easier than getting out of a sword fight with only insults. But How do I be getting me podcast out to the world?
Zencaster takes care of that too. You can distribute your podcast to all the major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more straight from the Zencaster platform. It's a one-stop shop to get your podcast heard by the masses.
Well, shiver me timbers. That sounds like the perfect solution. How can our listeners be giving it a try, Dave?
It's simple. Just head over to zencaster.com/pricing and use our code, all one word, memory card lane. You'll get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan. Whether you're recording your first episode or leveling up your current podcast, Zencaster makes it easy.
All right, listeners, you've got no more excuses. Start your own podcast and conquer the digital seas. It's easier than solving the Monkey Island treasure map.
Yes, indeed. So head to Zencaster, use our offer code MemoryCardLane, and get 30% off your first month. Get your voice out there and start your podcast journey today.
Now let's be getting back to solving the secret of Monkey Island.
Putting together the Secret of Monkey Island was definitely more than just putting the story and all the plot elements together. This game was the fifth Lucasfilm Games project that the company had used the SCUMM engine for, and like I mentioned earlier, with each subsequent game, they kept improving on the engine, right? Every game brought something new to the table. So for this game, Gilbert had really wanted to make this adventure title more simple and more accessible than all the previous games that had used the SCUMM engine. Now, Monkey Island does use almost the same version of the SCUMM engine as Indiana Jones had used, but for this game, for instance, the developers, for starters, had added dialogue trees, where you can, pick different lines of dialogue to answer a question, and you would get different dialogue back. In fact, this is one of the earliest games that we know of, not the earliest, but one of the earliest games that we know of that has ever utilized dialogue trees. So if you hate dialogue trees, you can thank the Monkey Island series, likely for popularizing them.
Oh.
They also removed the what is option. That was where you could say what is the door, what is the ball, what is this. It allowed you to ask what an object was. Instead, they changed the engine. So again, we had mice at the time. So if you highlighted the object with your mouse cursor, it told you what it is. So simplified the game. Instead of having to use hard verbs, the game introduced shortcuts. So instead of having to say talk to so-and-so, if you clicked on that character, you would talk to him, because talking is the most obvious action that the player wants from that click, correct?
Correct?
So there were a lot of things that they did to basically make this more accessible to people. Aside from that, I mean, this is about the time that we were getting color changes from EGA to VGA. So, we were going from 16 colors to 256 colors. So they kind of worked in that environment of updating to VGA. This got CD quality music because we were going from floppies to CD-ROM in the 90s. So, there were some other things that they did, but I mean, all in all, they made it simple. They made it more accessible. They all wrote a great story. Ultimately, the team developed The Secret of Monkey Island over about 9 months. It cost roughly about $200,000 to produce. They did it, and they released it. They released the first version, which was the EGA version, the 16-bit version or 16-color version, in October of 1990. The 256 VGA version got a December release, and then that fancy CD-ROM work came a few years later. A CD-ROM version with the higher music and everything came in 1992. So it got a few releases. Also got a special edition with some upgrades in 2009, like not really a remake. Let's call it a retouch, refinish, so to speak. So for those of you who don't know, Secret of Monkey Island is a point-and-click adventure game. It tells the story of Guybrush Threepwood, a name that we make fun of, you might heard. He's a young man who dreams of becoming a pirate, and he explores fictional islands while solving puzzles. It has a lot of humor, has a lot of just has a great story. Honestly, this is one of those titles. It's a seminal title for the graphic adventure, for the adventure genre period. This game ends up on so many lists of greatest games of all time. It's not even funny. It's just one of those that people really enjoy. It's just a fantastic game. They're if you know anything, Lucas Arts games at the time, they were all known for the same things. They were all known for having great stories. They were all known for having irreverent sense of humor. They were known for being great games with great puzzles. And Monkey Island's probably the best. I would argue the best known, might even be the best of them if you want to get into that argument. But I'm very fond of Maniac Mansion myself because I'm a sci-fi nut. I think your preference would have to be one or the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you got a point.
But it's a fantastic game, and it spawned a series. No doubt that it spawned an entire series. There is not just one Monkey Island game. There are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 Monkey Island games. We got a sequel in 1991 called Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. So that was fun. Always fond of seeing LeChuck, right? We like LeChuck. We don't like LeChuck. He's the bad guy. In 1997, we got the third game in the series. Actually, we got a sequel to Monkey Island 2 called The Curse of Monkey Island. It sold well, but people are lukewarm about it, to be totally honest with you. In 2000, we got Escape from Monkey Island, the fourth game in the Monkey Island series, a direct sequel to The Curse of Monkey Island. Escape from Monkey Island is when the series moved into the 3D realm. It went into the 3D graphics realm with the fourth game in the series. So that was fun. That was very much fun. It also has a distinction of being the last LucasArts adventure game to be released. There are later games in the series, but they're not LucasArts games. So this is the last of the LucasArts games, so to speak.
Of all of the LucasArts games, the
It,
LucasArts Adventure games.
of all the LucasArts adventure games.
Okay.
Yeah, of all the LucasArts adventure games. They really didn't do much after that. They kind of stopped doing everything in 2004. Their series kind of went on in different ways, different studios. Like, for instance, the next game in the Monkey Island series was Tales of Monkey Island, and that was created by Telltale Games. The guys who made the really fantastic Walking Dead Telltale Games series.
Sure, whatever. I actually don't know.
Okay, cool. I'm glad. I'm glad that we had
It's
that
Walking
comment.
Dead, man. I don't know it. I've never seen it. Never had interest in seeing it.
So, the Tales of Monkey Island was made by Telltale Games, and that came out in 2009. And then, like I said, in 2009, they also did a remake of the original, of The Secret of Monkey Island. They did a remake. They tried to leave as much of the original design as alone as possible, but they did fix things, right? Some of the things that they didn't get right in terms of, like, hey, we have this dead end in the game. They fixed. They made changes to the level of immersion, because now they have more technology. They released the remake for iPhone, Windows, Xbox 360. The original was a mouse game, keyboard and mouse that doesn't translate well to a analog stick situation. So they kind of had to make changes to the game in terms of the way its interface works to make it work in the modern age. So they did a whole bunch of upgrades. There are a lot of people who are fans of the special edition. It looks better, it plays better, but it tells the same story. And it's always great when a developer does that and does that well. You have the special edition, and they also did a special edition of Monkey Island 2. And then we didn't hear anything for a while until recently when Ron Gilbert picked up the series again. and released a sixth Monkey Island game called Return to Monkey Island, which came out in 2022. So we got it just a few years ago, honestly. A couple summers ago it came out. The new one is the first game that Ron Gilbert was involved with because he left after Monkey Island 2 to go do other things. So really it's the first game since Monkey Island 2, Secret of Monkey Island 2 that Gilbert's been involved with, but he comes in, with what he's working on at the time and the company he's working with, and they do Return to Monkey Island, and it's received pretty well. I think it brings Monkey Island to a new generation, which is always a nice thing. If I'm not mistaken, it's on Game Pass. I could be wrong on that one. But I think the company that made it, Devolver, is a Microsoft game studio.
Somehow I never played any of them. I didn't even know most of them existed. I may have seen one of them once, but
Well,
it's just not familiar.
the point and click adventure genre is not your thing at all.
Okay, you got a point there.
But yeah, Gilbert works on Monkey Island. He works on Monkey Island 2. He leaves after Monkey Island 2. He goes to form a company called Humongous Entertainment, and they put out things like Putt Putt and Freddy Fish and Pajama Sam. And then mid-90s, he goes to Cave Dog Entertainment, who makes Total Annihilation, which was the prequel to Supreme Commander, which we love so much, which is really funny that he produced Total Annihilation. That always cracks me up to go from Monkey Island to that RTS series, but sometimes our careers are weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just never know what's going to happen.
And then, he just kind of comes around, goes back to working for Tim Schafer with Tim Schafer's company, which was called Double Fine. I think they do a game called The Cave. And then obviously he comes back around to, to do Monkey Island again. Return to Monkey Island. And there really hasn't been anything from him since then. We recently celebrated an anniversary of Secret of Monkey Island, 1990, and what they did for the anniversary is he did a whole awesome interview with the Video Game Historical Foundation, where he brought a whole bunch of like unseen materials, like sketches and notebook type stuff, and he talked about it. And a lot of what we talked about here is from that interview, things that we learned from that interview with the society. So he's still active in the video game community in a good way. He's giving back in a fantastic way, Rob.
Well, it's good that he is.
That's all I have to say about that. So that's Monkey Island. That's Gilbert's middle career. I'm sure we'll revisit Total Annihilation or pick him up at some of the others I just glossed over. But that's that's Gilbert, and then Schafer, of course, went on to do Psychonauts, so we already know his career. And LucasArts went defunct in 2004, I think. I don't know. Lots of other stories to check out that are tied to this one. And of course, if you want to check on any of those stories, you can do so by going to our website, which is www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people do on our website?
Well, you can find a calendar of our upcoming episode topics. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come talk with Dave and I. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us, get access to ad-free and unedited versions of all of our episodes. And I am on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor. And Dave, now for those of us that were listening at the beginning, here is why I made the statement I did. What is yours?
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong.
Wrong.
Each week, we tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It could be about a game, console, technology. Heck, we did an episode on a museum once. I just find something that fits this week and I shove it in the podcast hole. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. One of the best parts about doing this podcast is each week when I sit down to do my research for every episode, I inevitably learn things. I'm always about learning new things. I love learning new things. I look at everything and I say, I didn't know that. And if I didn't know that, I'm hoping that you didn't know that either. So we are on a historical journey of learning. In celebration of that cycle of learning and learning, we like to go round table and talk about our own personal what we've learned each week. Rob, so what did you learn today?
I learned a whole lot about Monkey Island.
Yeah, does it make you want to play it?
I don't know that it does. It's worth checking out to see if it's something I would have interest in, but
Nah, it's still not your genre, no matter
yeah,
how we shake it.
that's kind of how I'm thinking. I'm not opposed to giving it a try, but I do like that it has some inspiration with Pirates of the Caribbean because it's fun to me.
I understand that. I do. Pirates of the Caribbean is fun for everybody. I don't care who you are.
So it's pirates themed. Pirates are cool. So that's why I'm saying like it's probably pretty good if that's your style of game. I mean, pirates are fun, and monkeys they're cool. So yeah. What about yourself, Dave? What was your big learning point this week?
I like learning how designers design their games. So finding that interview where Gilbert broke it down point by point of how he went about it was incredibly fascinating to me. So I like it. I mean, and it's not very different from how we do things, like outline things or how we tell stories point by point. It's just fascinating. It's just fascinating because we go from God, what episode did we do recently where they were like, we didn't plan anything, we made it up as we went along. We had a game mechanic we liked, we did it. If it was great, great. If it wasn't, we nixed it. Like there was one episode that we did recently where that was how they made the game, right? And then you go to a designer like this who's like, yeah, I wrote a 4 and 5 page story, and then when people liked it, I turned that into an outline of everything I want to do in a game, and then I turned that into 4 puzzles for each of those outline points. And you're like, oh, well, this is what an actual game designer does, right? Just not someone who's winging it as they go along. So I find that fascinating.
You say that like how many have done it? Just winged it as they go along.
I don't know, probably more than we care to admit. So
I feel like it's come up a time or two at least.
yeah, I know. All right. Well, Rob, that's Monkey Island. Before I take it out of this week and into next week, is there anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
As always, I want to take one quick moment to say thank you so much to everyone for listening. We hope you enjoy learning with us as we discover games that some of us may know nothing about. And sometimes they're cool and pirate themed. So
Sometimes they're
thank
cool and
you.
pirate themed indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of our adventure through the secret of Monkey Island. From the iconic insult sword fights to Guybrush Threepwood's unlikely journey to becoming a pirate, this game holds a special place in the hearts of adventure game fans. Its clever writing, memorable characters, and influence on the genre make it one of the most beloved titles in gaming history. Literally on so many best games of all time lists, it's not even funny. Whether you've played it before or you're just learning about it today, like Rob, we hope that you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Monkey Island. Next week, though, we're leaving behind the lighthearted pirate adventures and plunging into the depths of space horror by looking at Dead Space. We'll explore how this survival horror classic redefined terror in gaming with its tense atmosphere, grotesque enemies, and innovative gameplay mechanics. So gear up, grab your plasma cutter, and prepare to dismember some Macroforps? They're Macroforps. So gear up, grab your plasma cutter, and prepare to dismember some necromorphs on another terrifying trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Scoob it up, dap, 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 doo, da.